my little list here, Matt, it says intro and general warmth.
Well, we can fake it, can't we?
I don't know. Can we? But it's not. It's a little chilly today, and so I was just thinking, should I button up fully, or perhaps I should go and get a jumper? And then I looked out into my thing, and I see you with almost no clothes on, Matt.
For the record, I do have both tops and bottoms on.
Both of them.
Both of them. Do you need a turtleneck? Are you chilly of the neck? Is there a draft?
Do people still wear those? Isn't that only the French and the American Air Force from the 30s wear those, don't they? Do people
maybe that. Should we do some human branded turtlenecks?
Oh yeah, we should. That would be really nice, wouldn't it?
Add them to the human store.
Yes, I like that very much. Yeah, okay, well, let's do that. So I was just making sure that people could see us, because I noticed that there was a setting that I hadn't changed in YouTube, which makes our faces next to each other when we record it. So,
in a cute way, or in an Island of Dr. Moreau style, gene splicing?
I don't know what you're talking about now. You have to remember that you're significantly older than I am.
I am. I was the first twin out. You stayed in for another month, didn't you?
Oh, I love the fact that there could be chat about us being brothers, and not just in the proud way. Anyway, so listen, what are we doing this week, Matt?
We're talking fear. Feel everything and rise. That was an acronym I just made up.
Did you really? Did you just make that up?
No, there's a song by Ian Brown off of the Stone Roses called FEAR, and all the way through it's different acronyms for what fear could be.
Oh, nice. That's quite nice. I do love myself for an acronym, but it's a bit like a cliche. Sometimes you can get a bit acronymed out, can't you?
WTF, BRB.
We do. Do you know what? Working in the corporate world, you realise just how many acronyms there are. And there's one acronym, MI. So obviously, I have a medical background. So MI is myocardial infarction. Most people know it as a heart attack.
Yes.
But MI has oh my word, it's like the most overused. I have this guessing game to see if each new industry I work with has an acronym for do you use MI? Okay, I'll use that.
What has it meant? I've never come across it.
I knew you were going to ask that, and now I've got to remember them all, haven't I? Myocardial infarction.
Said that one.
Just stalling for time. Measured improvements. There's a pharmacology one for MI, and I forget what that isn't myocardial infarction. It's another thing. There's one in banking that I remember them using MI in that as well. There's loads of them. And in with architects, there's an MI as well.
Oh gosh, what about meeting interrupted? No.
Yes. Well, you've made it up, so it is an acronym now.
It is now. It's true. It's true that I said it.
So I sort of feel, hey, we could, sound effects, because we obviously got the Book of the Week jingle now, God help us all, but we also could have, because this is fear, we could have weekly topic dependent sound effects. That's my dog shaking in the background. So not like that. I mean, because this is fear, we could have a right.
Yeah, I can see your little face lit up when you were. I can't possibly poo-poo that because you look so excited about it.
Well, let's run with it, and we'll let our listener vote.
Okay, great.
The listener is the one that has to be subjected to this, so they can decide whether or not we carry on.
Thanks, Mum.
So,
fear.
Fear. So, good or bad? What's your kind of thinking?
Funnily enough, that was one of my, let's throw a question grenade your way. And actually, I think fear does have a beneficial place and a role. However, I think many people go straight in with, fear is to keep you safe. And I think it's actually a bit more than that. I think it's a communication system.
Yes,
to just let you know, often things that we're subconsciously we hold on to are being triggered, are like value boundaries are being crossed.
Yes.
Now that can be with classic deep-seated things like snakes, for example.
Yes.
Or it could be the fear of embarrassment in public.
Yeah.
Which are all come from our past in some regard, and it's and obviously anything can set them off. It doesn't need to be like someone could be so scared of snakes that they see a snake on the TV and they're like, "Oh, I can't look."
Yeah.
That's still a communication system of things they've learned previously. Going beep 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 beep. Think about this.
Two of the things that I've always been fascinated by with fear. One of them is that people's concept of fear is entirely subjective. So some people love snakes, keep them as a pet, kiss them, cuddle them, have them in bed, all the rest of it. We've all heard the horror story. I don't know if any of these are true about, the people that keep snakes and in the middle of the night they find them trying to eat them. They wake up and think, oh, my legs feel wet. And then, they look down and there's like an anaconda, trying to devour them in the middle of the night. And I suspect that's probably never happened. Or like the neighbor that rings the police and says, I've not seen Mr. Jefferson for 3 weeks and I'm a little concerned, and they go around, there's just a big fat snake in the living room, like
oh my God, please never do that face again. Wow.
Funny how your preferences change when we're recording.
Mr. Jefferson.
So then, do we have to do a disclaimer, like all names and stories are entirely fictional and not relation to real life or something like that? Anyway, so that I find is really interesting. Some people's fears are other people's pleasures, right? And so where does that come from? So is fear learned? Is it genetic? Is it inherited? Is there a construct? How is it that one person can? And even if it's not loved, so one person, for example, can use cotton wool on their, skin routine or whatever, and another person, they don't even think anything of it. It's just a way of getting rid of makeup or applying something. Another person can't even look at cotton wool because it's so fearful. That's one thing I'm really fascinated about. And the other thing is this idea that fear is not always the thing that we think it is. So I don't know. I don't know what to explore first. The fact that fear is very different for each of us, but also the idea that, well, how would you define fear? Because it was obviously clearly useful. Your example was really good there about how, it's basically it's a measure, isn't it? It's almost like not an electric fence, but it's almost like a sensitive pressure pad around your boundaries.
Early warning system, yes.
Yeah.
Well, okay, here's a good question again then. So what's the biggest fear of all? Is there a fear that links all of us?
Now that's interesting because there are several studies over the last sort of 50 or so years that about what our societal fears are. Because they help shape psychosocial changes, and they influence things like design and healthcare, etc., etc. But always in the top 3 or 4 are fear of dying and a fear of public speaking, and I believe that public speaking is second only to a fear of dying in the most feared things about living for a human being. Now, isn't that remarkable?
It really is, and I guess it's hard maybe for both of us to relate to that, given that's what we do a lot of the time. So it's hard to sort of understand where that comes from. But if we're honest and take a step back, I guess it's about being judged by multiple people, exposing yourself, not like that, but laying yourself bare, not like that, and saying, this is me. I'm here to. I guess also, hold on, this is becoming. If you're standing in front of if you're public speaking in front of lots of people, you're also subconsciously saying, I have something important to say. And if they don't agree with it, then it could undermine your self-esteem. Maybe I'm not important. Like that whole train of thought of, well, if I'm here, I'm trying to be a leader, I'm trying to speak to you about something that's important and means something to me. But if they don't get it, then what does that mean for me? And maybe I need to question everything I thought I held true.
Yeah, and that's interesting in itself, because of course you don't have to question everything you've held true. Marley, come and settle down here, darling. Come on. Try to pretend that you love me. 11 years can't just sort of disappear overnight because you like Jack more. Good boy. I have paid for you consistently, and your survival is based on my income. So that's lovely. Thanks very much. We'll just pretend that you love me. Good boy. Yeah, I find that you know, the idea of what you find fearful and that someone else might not find it fearful could be our salvation, couldn't it? Couldn't that be the thing that makes something less fearful to us? I wonder if understanding why they don't find it scary can help us to perhaps desensitize ourselves to it by normalizing it almost. I mean, that I know that doesn't work classically exclusively as a treatment, for example, but equally, you know, that's kind of one end of the spectrum, which is, let's talk about it loosely. And some people, of course, their fears are so ingrained and extreme that they can't, you know, see the word spider. They can't think about a spider. They can't talk about spiders. And of course, the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of treatment is the classic psychological flooding, which is when you are forced to be, you know, almost overwhelmed by the thing that you find fearful in the apparent hope, never works, that you will get over it almost. You're forced to get over it. So it's
Does it not work?
It's the equivalent of saying, I'm scared of spiders. And you say, I know what will fix that. I've got this room here full of spiders and I'm going to lock you in it until you're a quivering, sweaty mess. So somewhere in the middle, I wonder if there's a sweet spot where we understand how to not embrace, that's probably a bit too much too soon for most people, not accept, that's probably too much too soon for some people, but to desensitize the fear a little bit by understanding why it's not a fear for other people, because by virtue of someone else not being scared of it, it sort of normalizes it. It desensitizes. You think, well, it can't be as fearful as, you know, as I make it if that person is cuddling a spider, you know?
But that's assuming that we think rationally around fears, which we can logically take that like helicopter view, but when we're in the moment, maybe that's not possible. But actually, with the spider thing, this is maybe this is going to be my new career, like helping people. Like, people obviously wouldn't be scared of a money spider. And then, or maybe someone is, but like most people probably wouldn't because it's 2 millimeters across. And then if you had under another glass a spider that was 3 millimeters across, and you're like, are you okay with that one? Yeah, I'm okay with that one. You had a spider 5 millimeters across. You okay with that one? Yeah, fine. And then if you had progressively large spiders up to like the one at the end of arachnophobia, maybe that way you could actually get there and realize, hey, that's the same as that one. It's just got enormous teeth and wants to bite my armpits.
I think there are some really interesting ways of approaching the thing that we find fearful. And I think you're right. It starts with, how fearful am I of this thing? Yes. So you score it on 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 or whatever. But then the next bit, very quickly, don't spend too much time about saying, you know, is this a 10 out of 10 fear or 1 out of 10 fear? To find a comparison fear is also very useful. So this is my 8 out of 10 fear. So what other things are you fearful of in life that you might not think, oh, I'm really scared of that, but actually that, you know, I actually am a bit fearful about the idea of my job sending me somewhere away and I can't be near my partner or my home, or my parents moving away from me. And so there's a low level fears at sort of 4s or 5s or something. And once you've got that comparison, then the next bit really is then what next thing, isn't it? So what contextualize the fear? So why are you fearful of it? What are you fearful that might happen? You know, and if it's for very often, the reason that I'm going on down this route is that very often fears are not necessarily logical. They're very often irrational. And so when we start to rationalize it, you know, what is it that you're scared about this little spider running across the carpet? What is it that is it that you think it's going to bite you? Is it that you think it will, you know, run at you? Or, you know, because you're this huge, great, big, tiny. So what is it? And to try and describe it and really understand the fear, because the emotion of fear is often the thing that drives us, not the logic of why we are scared of something. And of course,
it's really the logic, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. And very often where we let ourselves down often in life is that we're driven by emotion and not by clarity.
But do you think it's also, because this is your area, like evolutionary throwbacks, some of them, to keep us safe, or things we had to learn 150,000 years ago?
Yeah, 150,000 years ago, yeah.
No?
Broad timelines.
When the dinosaurs were around, yes, and the Bible was written.
Again, very broad timelines we're using. So if you're listening to this and doing your homework and maybe you've chosen history as your homework, don't think, I'll just listen to the Human podcast and I'll save me having to do any homework or research.
When the Tudors were around,
when your grandma was born 150,000 years ago. Yeah, of course, there are those instinctive things that that we've developed and have never gone away, but actually many of them are useless. We don't need a lot of these inherited behaviors that we have now, because the classic, it's a cliche, it really irritates me whenever I hear it. I'll say it only because it is used so often as an example. It's almost become sort of like a household thing, but the flight or fight response, to the extent that we have it now, of course, was inherited by saber-toothed tigers. Do you run forwards or do you run away? However, it's purely built on the way that human behavior and our learning links together. So, for example, because of course your brain remembers all these things, we remember by learning chains. There's a reason why you won't put your hand into an oven when it's hot, and touch the side. There's a reason why if you plug the iron on and switched it on, you won't hold it to your face. Because the one time that you accidentally touched it and it hurt like freaking like loads, you remember that. And the blockchain is there. All the parts are there. Iron, hot, pain, right? So you don't do it. Similarly, generationally ago, when somebody ran towards a saber-toothed tiger and thought, that looks really cute, he looks really fluffy and cuddly, right, and was mauled half to death, or that other people saw that happen, that blockchain was there, right? So instinctively, you would know not to run towards a bear because it ran towards you and you got extremely scared and you thought, well, crikey, I'm going to run away. By running away is a survival tactic. So you remember that. So the next time you see something scary or that instinctively you're worried about, you run away from it instead of running towards it. And so, those sorts of blockchain behaviors can be really useful to us, but they can, if we always just go on, the emotion that comes from that fear, they can hinder as well, because not all things require that sort of dramatic response. And so, if you don't understand what it is that you're scared about, now a bear is obvious because it will kill you and eat you, right? So if you value your life, probably moving away from it is the way to go. Although I heard, the slight digression, I heard that the advice that they give you is not to run away from a bear, because most people can't outrun them, but is to be a bear.
Make yourself big.
I'm not so certain that if I was, trekking through the woods and came across a bear, that I, if it was there and went, I wouldn't think, like that. I'm not sure I would. I'm a runner, I think, Matt.
But I guess. Well, that actually, because you said that the two Fs, flight or fight, but there's a third F. There's freeze as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, let's hope you never have to find out what you would do in that scenario.
Right. But then, so let's kind of channel that down real quick before we take a quick break into Book of the Week, I suppose. Which is what. Just, I thought I'd let you know it was coming so you can warm up.
Just warming up, yeah.
What does that mean normally? What is the bear in our normal life? Is it the challenging phone call? Is it the difficult email that you've got to do? Is it the person calling that, is an ex or something, or a boss that you don't like and you've got to answer the phone, it's going to be a difficult conversation to have? Is it the mother-in-law or the father-in-law visiting that is not a nice experience? What is the bear in your daily life that you would metaphorically or slightly physically run away from instead of running towards 2, or that you freeze. And knowing that you've got those 3 instinctive responses. So if you do consciously nothing, you're either going to run away from it. That may or may not be a good thing, because the problem often still exists.
Yep.
You're either going to freeze and do nothing. Again, not necessarily.
Doesn't change the situation. Yeah.
Or you're going to, quote unquote, advance towards it, which I would say is more solution orientated. So you're going to solve it in some way. It's a bit like the classic, in terms of relational statuses, and that could be a loving relationship or work relationship, friend relationship. When there is a rupture, the best thing to do is immediately repair, not stew on it and let it, kind of build up, because then something ridiculous happens where somebody leaves a towel on the floor and all merry hell lets loose because, quote unquote, you left the towel on the floor. And it's not about the towel on the floor. It's the fact that all these other things have happened that you've not repaired. So I think knowing that you've got fight, flight, freeze, you can choose one of those. And so when you start to unpick this idea of what fear is and what we're scared of and why we're fearful of it, you get a little closer to realizing that we can manage it really proactively and much more effectively than we do if we just leave it to instinct, because instinct is, of course, not necessarily useful right now, because a lot of that instinctiveness has been inherited. Does that sort of make sense?
It very much so does. And the instinct has evolved much slower than society has evolved. So instinct, that's another reason why instinct isn't necessarily always the right thing to follow in those scenarios. And I was thinking, after Book of the Week, we could continue our just so excited. We could continue our quest to be open and vulnerable, and we could talk about what our personal bears are.
Yes, well, actually, we need to do that because we still haven't, and I think we've probably spoken about it at least twice before, and we keep forgetting, is we haven't shared what our self-belief insecurities are.
Yeah, well, we did. Yeah, we did last time.
Oh, did we? I'll edit this down. Yes, that's a great thing. We definitely should discuss about our fears and be vulnerable and open. Brilliant.
Personal bears, wonderful.
Personal bears. Touch of the bear again.
It's a recurring theme. Lovely. Well, what a lovely start to fear that was.
Go on.
Book of the week. If you're English or Greek, it's Book of the Week. Don't be meek.
Be meek.
I'm running out of weak rhymes.
Other nationalities are most welcome to Book of the Week. You don't just have to be Greek or British.
British. Let's. What have you got, Jez?
What have I got? Well, raging headache. I have got, which I suppose in the broader, grander scheme of things is better than syphilis. This is the international bestseller by Gavin De Becker, The Gift of Fear. Oh. It is one of the best books I've ever read. It's in my top. Oh, it's really difficult.
You do say that every week. This was the best book I've ever read. No, this is.
But genuinely, it's because I only pick the ones that are really good. When you've got 3,000 plus books, it is really difficult when people say, "Oh, what's your favorite book?" And I'm like, I don't have a favorite book, but I've got lots that are in my pile. And to put it into context, I counted the other day, I've got just under 50 books in my to-read pile, because I'm that person that when you're reading a book and they go, "Oh, when I read this book," I was like, "Oh," and I pause reading, go straight on Amazon, buy the book that they've referenced in the book, that arrives, and I'm like, damn it, I'll add it to my reading pile. But it is one of the best books I've ever read. And I judge that by, and if you're looking on our YouTube channel, I'm going to show the camera. Where is there a focus? I'm sorry, I don't know. But there are lots of dog-eared pages in it. You can sort of see there all the dark marks there. And so whenever I see something I think is interesting or research that I'll come back to or whatever, I dog-ear the pages. And I would say that probably a third of this book is dog-eared. And I think there may even be an annotation or two. Gavin De Becker is a sort of expert, an American expert on violent behavior. I believe he had a background in law enforcement, like maybe, it's just a long time ago since I read this. I think he's FBI or something like that. I'm very quickly looking to see if there is anything in here. But he talks about all of the tiny little subtle cues, the little subconscious signals that we know our brain processes and knows when we are scared of something or when we're in danger. And it opens, it opens with a sort of description of a woman who was attacked in some back streets. Right. And I think she may have even been murdered. And so they were looking to find out, how did people know that it was going to happen or not happen? And, they interviewed a neighbor, and the neighbor said, well, I heard this kind of, gunshot, or I heard this, and I saw this kind of shifty character, and I sort of sensed that maybe something wasn't right, but I ignored it. I thought, no, I get the benefit of the doubt. And another woman who escaped, she was walking down the street and she sort of sensed that something wasn't quite right about the guy following her or something like that. Lots of those sort of little signals. So how can we listen to those signals? How can we learn from them? What is fear? But how can we actually appreciate that fear is a real gift? Because it helps, if we listen to it, it helps us to make better decisions and also keep us safer, is his sort of his thrust. The strapline is survival signals that protect us from violence. It's published by Bloomsbury. I think it's quite an old book now. I'm kind of guess around 2010, but let me 1997. That's well done, Jez. Spot on with your. But very close to 2010. By about 20 years. So couldn't recommend this more. And I think that's an interesting thing for us to maybe touch on later, is that, when you think about it in context, you think about the thing you're fearful of, and that defines your fear, as opposed to fear being the thing that you should explore, the actual feeling of fear, rather than the thing that you're scared of. That's Marley, who's scared that he might wee himself if he doesn't get left out soon. So it's that shift, I think, of rather than being consumed by the spider or consumed by the loneliness or consumed by the whatever else you're fearful of, actually sitting with that feeling and exploring that more and understanding it, because then you can use it to your benefit. That's mine.
Wow. It sounds very interesting, a different perspective as well. And I practically trying to keep you safe from violence and danger sounds quite useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And bears.
Now,
I suspect, Matt, that because this is your book of the week, it's a children's storybook or some sort of intergalactic adventure in space or something.
With pop-ups, yes. No, it is one of my favorite books. And I know I say that every time as well. It is American Pastoral by the amazing Philip Roth, sadly now deceased. Came out in 1998, so therefore better than your book, 97. Fiction, sorry, Jez, but it's written as it's based in the 60s and told in flashbacks as well about an all-American hero who grows up. He's the head of he's the captain of the football team. His family have a factory in town. Everything is perfect for him, and his life goes perfectly. And he believes this dream is going to continue forever. And the reason I'm linking this to fear is because I think a lot of people's fears are that everything they believe in maybe isn't what they think it is, or it will come crumbling down, or life isn't actually as perfect as we can kid ourselves that it is. And I say that because what happens, and this isn't a spoiler, it's on the back, as the countercultural revolution happens through the 60s and beyond, his daughter, one of his daughters, grows up. And for a start, now I'm going to say this very carefully, so he believes he's going to have this perfect life. His daughter has a stutter. Now, I'm in no way saying like a speech impediment in any form. It doesn't make you perfect. But for him, that was the first sign that she wasn't this perfect. She wasn't going to be Miss New Jersey like his wife had been. Right. Plus, then she goes on to plant a bomb in the local post office and kill someone. And from then it just all spirals, and she goes on the run. And it's this him coming to terms with the American dream not being what it is, his life not being what was promised, his daughter and family not being what was promised. I'm getting goosebumps again. It's so incredibly written and these rich, long sentences that draw you in. And I just adore it. And I think it is a big fear that what we think we have or what we think we deserve, we don't get or isn't what we expect.
Gosh. I mean, that's probably the first one that you've brought to the table that genuinely makes me, I think, want to read fiction.
Then my work here is done. Then my work here isn't done.
But that sounds really good.
Oh, he's a brilliant writer.
You're a bit of a fan of the prose, aren't you?
Oh, sure.
You do like you're a what's the word? You're a vole of the verbose. That's not probably the right thing, is it?
Bibliophile?
Like to burrow your way through a book.
Stick my snout into a paragraph or two.
That's it. Well, so those are two. I mean, I don't suppose yours links to fear at all, does it? Not that they have to, but
I just said it did in about 6 different ways, you shit. My fear is that I don't actually trust my co-host.
Let's leave it up to the listeners. Mine has the word fear in the title. So
maybe people don't like things spelled out for them. Maybe they don't have to have it on a platter. Maybe I'm respecting our audience's intelligence.
What I thought was interesting is when you hold this up to the camera, gift is massive, right? I mean, that is the standout word on that cover. And I wondered whether gift or fear should be standout. Do you think maybe fear should have been more standouty on there?
Maybe they tested in because it's been out since 1997 what people responded to, and when fear was big, people didn't buy it because actually they didn't like to face their fears, and gift makes it sound like it's a gift.
Yeah, maybe. 1 minute. Can you let Marley in, please? Jack? Cat? Anyone?
How's that fear of abandonment coming?
Yeah. Oh, Marley, come on. This way, bud. Come on, dude. Sorry, mate. I just wanted to get rid of little woofy dog. Cool. Well, then I suppose that sort of brings us back to our second bit of fear. I'm genuinely a little bit worried about this. I wouldn't say I have any fear about it, but the idea of sharing our personal fears is, well, it's frankly personal, Matt.
And fearful. And maybe it's never been done.
Well, I've always said I love to be a world first.
Yes. Maybe this will win us a poddy.
I've done enough. What is that? Oh no, that's the thing you made up. I remember in the test episodes. I can't do it. The test. Isn't it funny that the first thing I think of is the word test? Anything more than test becomes testicles. There's no other word in my vocabulary that isn't testicles. Is there another word that begins with test that isn't testicle?
Well, when someone phones you up, yes. When someone phones you up and they're angry, those are testy calls. I'll see myself out.
And if you wish to have the same Christmas crackers that Matt has to get at least 12 jokes for 2022, we'll leave a little link in the show notes. I suspect they're from a pound store. But what do you think are the most common things that are feared? I mean, I got that bit of research that I only remember those two because I think that's amazing. Fear of death and fear of dying, particularly, and fear of public speaking. But in your experience, what do you think are the other things that people really fear? Because you must have the concept also from a personal training point of view as well.
Not fitting in.
Societally,
and I guess being left behind, or / abandonment, I guess. But equally, before you even get to abandonment, not fitting in the first place, and feeling pressured to fit in some way, whether that's how you look, who you hang out with, what you do, how your body is, anything like that. I guess in my sphere, what I come across is, is my body currency? Do I look good enough to fit in? I have this fear I won't be accepted if I don't look a certain way. Are my pecs big enough? Things like that.
Acceptance is huge though, right? It's a really, really big thing for human beings. And this cycle is so dangerous. I can see it. It's so real and prevalent, and I think it's very social media driven. This very dangerous. I need to keep checking what everyone else is doing. How's everyone else looking? What's everyone else wearing? What's everyone else doing? So that I can emulate that and help me fit in. And I see it more and more and more and more, and it really unnerves me, because it seems like there's more attention being, even at a subconscious sort of low level. What are they doing? What do these people do? What are they buying? What are they wearing? What are they talking about? How are they talking? Where are they going to be seen? It's even little things like, of course, FOMO, right? Gosh, we should really bring that up, fear of missing out, and that being now a bloody hashtag and an actual phrase. That sometimes even there's this weird thing of people like tagging themselves because they want to be seen to be at the place that's being talked about, so they tag their location. I've been here, or I am there, or whatever. So that they can be seen to be being, in the place that is the cool place to be, or that, reflects, helps build an identity they want other people to be known by, rather than us looking just here first inwardly and saying, who am I? Who do I want to be? Who am I going to be happy being? And then you find your tribe, rather than finding a popular tribe, or finding a tribe that's being prescribed to you through media or whatever, and then thinking, okay, I need to adapt to fit in with them. Because the dangerous thing, Matt, is we can adapt. We're so adaptable as a species. We're so, our ability to evolve has been demonstrated over the last, according to you, 150,000 years. True. And look how far we've come. And our ability to habituate, to get used to things and to sort of shape ourselves is so real and such a useful thing. But it's also, I think, one of our greatest downfalls as human beings is habituation is one of the biggest things that holds us back and prevents us from being better at us, at being, me.
Well, it's evolutionary, but it's also in the moment in terms of being a chameleon, like there and then changing who you feel you need to be accepted in a specific moment. And that could be a different you to who it is at work or at home or in your relationship or with your friends.
Yeah.
And do you think self-acceptance is the key?
Oh, I would say self-acceptance is the key to everything.
Great.
It's almost the cornerstone to everything. From a behavioral perspective, from a psychological perspective, from a mental health perspective, from, at work, at home. Because once you get over the I am me and you get over it, if you think, this might be an easy exercise, and for others it will be an incomprehensible exercise. But just imagine for a second that you were able to say, I'm me, great, move on. And just say, well, this is me, isn't it? Yeah. Sigh, move on. Then what? What suddenly just falls away in your life? And it will be the desire to fit in, worrying about whether your friends like you, worrying about what your friends are saying about you, worrying about what your colleagues are saying about you, whether or not you're in the right career or not, whether, your stuff at home, what you look like, all of that shit just goes away. But our ability to not be able to say, well, this is me, I'm me, and not worry about that.
Do you think people are scared that if everything falls away, they'll see who they really are, and that stops them doing that work because the artifice around them is the crutch that keeps them going?
I have said for a long time that we're guarding an empty safe. I've
never heard that. That's incredible.
What we believe that we're doing is, and round he comes. You look like Tom Jones then from The Voice, but a little bit younger, little bit. So from very early on, we begin to put this sort of mask on. We begin to build this construct of who we are based on environment, based on who we're told that we should be or shouldn't be. Don't cry, boys don't cry. Girls need to be stronger. Girls need to, or women support the men in the home, or women don't support the men in the home, or women need more rights, or women don't need more rights, or men should be, this or that or whatever. These people wear dresses, these people don't. All of that nonsense. plus all of the other stuff. And as we move through our periods of life, we become different people, and we keep putting these different kind of walls up and stuff. So I don't think by the time most people get to 30, in that transition where you move out of your 20s and you get into your 30s, where sort of real adulthood starts, and there are significant shifts socially, I think significant shifts to the way that we think and feel as human beings as we develop. By that point, most people, the vast majority, have absolutely no idea who they really are. And they don't go through life necessarily consciously knowing that, but I think there's an inner knowing. There's a sense of things just not 100% being right. You don't know what your boundaries are. You know, the boundaries are you've created because other people have imposed them on you, or you've put them there because that felt right for other people. As you sit there smoking away because of everyone else around you smoking, or because you've been smoking since you were 14 or whatever, it isn't necessarily right for you, but you wouldn't necessarily know that. The clothes you wear, the music you listen to, the places you go, the fact that you get drunk all weekend and black out because that's what all your mates are doing or whatever. Yeah, I would say that by the time you get to that midlife bit, I don't think most people have actually said, who am I? And I'm 100% confident and can articulate these boundaries as my own, these beliefs as my own, these behaviors as my own, and these things that I like and don't like. I think we live a life of compromise.
Hold on, if you do know that, then, so surely the safe isn't empty that you're guarding.
Yes, because what you think you are guarding is you, but actually the thing that you're guarding is empty. There is nothing there. It isn't you at all. You are something completely different.
So a composite of everyone else and life around you, you mean?
Yeah, you're holding on to this idea of, oh, this is me. But actually, if you were to unlock it and look inside, you go, that's not you at all. There's nothing in there. Because we become very defensive about these ideals that we've created, about this construct that we've created, about, I'm crazy. I love my hair pink, because, or whatever. But if you drill down, you say, actually, the only reason I dye my hair bright pink is because my mates are all a bit loud and crazy, and I kind of fit in with them, and they all say, oh God, we love your hair that's crazy like that, so you carry on, or whatever. These are ridiculous examples, but I've met a lot of people that are, for example, through coaching and the business work that I've done, a lot of executives or sort of high level in terms of the corporate hierarchy, so they earn very good money, and they use the money to try to buy happiness or constructs of what happiness is, or success as well. So they think they need to be seen to be successful. So they need the 5-car garage and it filled with different cars. And they need the 3 dogs, and they need the, whatever. And I remember one of the coaching clients whose son had a heroin addiction, which did not at all match this, corporate idyll and this life he tried to buy. And actually, when we exactly that,
exactly like the book,
it's your book, and when we pushed and probed, we realized that actually all of this didn't mean anything. This was a facade that he'd bought and built that he thought was right, because he'd never asked himself, or nobody had ever put him in that position and said, what is right for you? What is real for you? And I think we know when it's not right, Matt. I think we know when there's a disingenuousness to our life, but we don't explore it because we don't have an alternative. So the greatest fear is abandonment, right? And the greatest fear is for somebody to come along and say, the person you thought you knew was you, the life you thought you knew doesn't exist. It's not even real. So then you're left hanging and dry, just held up like a little marionette, like a puppet, just dangling there with no concept of what is real and what isn't real, and having almost the feeling like you're gonna have to build up a massive part of your life all over again, or indeed your entire life. And having been there, having had that existential crisis myself, it is just like that. It is utterly exhausting, but it is the best process to go through, because you come out the other side. I can't even describe the level of happiness and contentment and wholesomeness having done that process, but it is not clean and it's not tidy.
No, it doesn't have to be. Linking to all of this, and that, especially that abandonment we were just talking about. I've heard this countless times when people, like coaches, or it's a saying that you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And you were talking earlier about, oh, well, I smoke because my friends smoke and it's what we do. And so there's that resistance to change, but that fear of change, that if I stop smoking, I'm not the same person that I was to be with those people.
Yep.
And like that. So A, do you think that's true about the whole, you're the sum of the 5 people you spend most time with? And B, is that resistance to change? I guess that's part and parcel of the abandonment thing, isn't it? If I change, I might be abandoned by the people who know me best, even if they're not the right. Even if they're not the right people for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Because no one wants to be alone, do they? No one wants. It's why very often in relationships you make compromise after compromise after compromise after compromise, and why your own boundaries you don't you
respect.
Yeah, because the alternative is, what if that other person doesn't agree and they leave me? What if they say, well, I thought you were that person, and so this relationship's over? So it's easier to compromise and stay and live the life we know than the life that's true, or the life that's real, right? So I don't know about the 5 thing. I've not really thought about it very much. There certainly has truth to it, obviously, because certainly the people you hang around with most are going to greatly influence the decisions that you make and who you are. And because, even if you think about it, if you're invited 6 friends over, and you intentionally didn't agree with all of them because you were true to yourself, well, then that would be a really horrific dinner party, wouldn't it? Because you wouldn't agree with anything. You wouldn't have anything in common to talk about. You disagree with most aspects of the things. So it's easier all the time to do that. So, you meet someone and it's really convenient. And so you do tend to flex and bend. I'm not saying we shouldn't, but I think there's a big difference between knowing what's true for you. If you don't know what is true and real for you, then it's very easy to compromise on that and begin to live a life based on someone else's construct of what is right and real for you. I've met countless people who are incredibly unhappy because their spouse always wanted to move to the countryside and they're a city person, and they've made that compromise and they're living in the middle of nowhere and they hate it, and vice versa. They grew up in the countryside, they've moved to the centre of London and they are just miserable, but they like it, and it's cool, we've got a nice house, and whatever, we're close to the park, or they make all these compromises all the time. I think sometimes the greatest problem is when we fear, isn't this tragic? We fear our true values because we don't know what they are.
How do we find them? Maybe that's probably a whole nother episode. In fact, values would be a wonderful.
Yeah, let's do that
next episode, because
we're sort of running to the end of this week's episode anyway. So there's a cliffhanger. So we'll explore that maybe in the next episode. But I think we can wrap up in a second. But I think the important thing, what I don't want this podcast to be, is for us to be the cat among the pigeons, and then just when the pigeons start to settle, start eating them. I would rather be the cat among the pigeons, and then when they land, sort of say, "Oh, so how was your flight?" And let's talk about. I don't know. I'm making this up as I go. What a terrible metaphor.
No, I like it. I just don't understand it.
No, me neither.
I went all Australian.
So, I guess a little bit of homework for everyone maybe is to think about all of the aspects of their life, from, I don't know, the job that they have, the types of clothes that they wear, the music they listen to, the friends that they hang around with, the lifestyle that they've got, maybe spiritual, emotional, financial, whatever, and really ask yourself, is there anything to that doesn't feel true to me? What if I could reset my life, if I could press pause and I could just reset everything, is there anything I would change? And it doesn't matter if you can or you can't. I say, well, of course there's that, but I can't do anything about it. That's okay. But knowing it is really important. And I would imagine that everybody has got at least one thing they could say, well, maybe I do feel a bit compromised on that. There's a boundary there that I've not established, or I'm not so certain about that. But if we're talking of boundaries, Matt, can we talk about what you're wearing?
I mean, it's quite a non sequitur, but yes, we can. Here I am, resplendent in my midnight black, made that up, in my black tank, as Americans would say, sleeveless t-shirt, we might say, human branded apparel, with the amazing, apparel spritz, with the amazing human thumbprint, which I'm obsessed with. It's not embossed, printed on it. And you should wear one too, because then you'd look great. And really, I didn't mean you, I meant you,
collectively.
The pub, yes, us as a species. It's really lovely soft cotton.
Species should wear one. Yes, please. That would help my mortgage out immensely.
But genuinely, it's really lovely soft cotton. It's delivered without any plastic, which is wonderful as well, and available in the human store. Where's that, Jez?
Well, where is that? Let's add that to the link. You just need to click on the link on our podcast, on the URL on our Instagram, which is @thathumanpodcast, and the link, the URL there will take you directly to the merchandise store. We've got all sorts in there, Matt. You can have sleeves if you want.
Yes. You don't have to sleeve it out.
But it looks great. And you've been over on your own social media, on your own Instagram. You've been wearing it, I noticed, a little bit on, and you've had a little bit of interest, haven't you? People have said they really like it and they want to know.
They really have. Well, I mean, it's because it's really nice. Yeah. In short, but yes, I have.
All of the verbs you could have used, you went with nice. Well, talking of social, so if you haven't already joined us, Matt, give us all of the blurb. Where can people join us more? Where can they share in? And maybe this week they might want to share their fears. Wouldn't this be quite interesting? We could do a little poll, couldn't we?
Yes.
You love a little poll.
My word. Well, it's @thathuman podcast on Instagram and the Twitter as well. And obviously, continue obviously you're listening to us already, so you'll probably want to continue on the same platform. But if you don't, all other platforms are available should you wish to diversify where you mine your podcasts.
Or just if other people, they say, I don't have Apple iTunes or whatever, where can I get it?
That's a more sensible reason to tell people how they can get it in different ways. Good.
There are other people as well that might want to do it. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Instagram, just because we're running those every now and again, little special offers exclusively on Instagram for the merchandise store and other special projects that are bubbling away in the background.
In the human universe, the humiverse.
You love it, don't you? You cannot help yourself.
I can't
imagine what your conversations at home are like. You remind me. Do you remember that guy, Rotatey Discs? Who was that guy that used to merge all of his words together? Oh, come on, don't play coy. You're
Reverend Spooner.
No.
Yes, it is. You've tasted a whole worm.
No, it is. Give me 2 seconds. Rotatey Discs.
Oh.
It is. Oh God, there's people screaming it at home. Or possibly not. Oh God, here it is. Unwin.
Yes, I do know who you mean.
First name Stanley Unwin.
Stanley.
Yes, Stanley Unwin. He used to sort of merge all of his words together and swap bits around, and you could still sort of understand what was going on. I'd imagine that's what it's like talking at home with you.
Truly, I am his spiritual heir.
Well, and for as long as you've got hair, we certainly should spiritually congratulate you and celebrate it. So, from me and Matt, thank you for joining us again on this special edition. Oh, it's not a special edition, but thank you for joining us again.
Aren't they all?
On this week's edition of the Human Podcast. Matt, it's probably time that we say goodbye, isn't it?
I think it is. Thanks, everyone, for listening. It's so much appreciated having you along for this ride. Jez as well. You were here too.
I was. And hopefully I'll be back next week as well.
Looking forward to it. Have a good week.
Bye.